Okay, hello and welcome back to I Believe She's Amazing. I'm so excited to welcome to the show today Kimberly Dowdell. She is another phenomenal human being that I have the privilege of meeting on social media, on Instagram. And what a pleasure it was. We had a conversation, was it a week ago already?
I think it was a week ago.
Week ago or a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
And
Or
and
yeah, something around there.
something around there. And I literally I got off, I went up to my husband, I was like, what an amazing woman. Like, I just
Oh,
felt connected. I really appreciate you and everything that you're doing. And I felt such a connection to you because we both have a special little child in our life, each of us, that were born, with an unexpected condition that we weren't necessarily, whoever is ready for anything like that. But I
right.
just really appreciate, and we're going to talk about that. Partly what we're going to talk about for sure is just the challenges and the triumphs that come with that, and how you have taken this on and really made it something that is a celebration of your son's life. So without further ado, we're just going to crack right on. So I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit. You're so multi-diverse because you're into fitness and wellness, and you have 4
Yes.
children and a husband and a busy life. And then you decided to start this social media page. So why don't you give a little bit of an intro to yourself now that I've already cracked the code and told everybody all the good stuff.
Okay. Um, yes, I'm all of those things. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a fitness instructor, I'm a social media influencer. I feel like I do it all. I feel like I wear many different hats.
Yeah.
Um, my oldest is 21, she's married. My next one is 19, and he is currently living in Ohio. He's serving a mission for our church, which is basically doing ministry work, and he's doing that for 2 years. Our next one is 17. He's a senior in high school, so he will be leaving the nest come next fall, which is hard to believe that we'll have 3 that have,
Wow.
left and moved on and started the next chapter of their lives. And then our youngest is Jack. He's 13, and he's the one that we tell everyone is the rock star of our family. He has Down syndrome, and that extra chromosome makes him extra special. And nobody cares about the rest of us. They just want to talk to Jack and see Jack. And then I've been teaching fitness for the last, I'm trying to think, it was since my third was 18 months. So 17 years, I think I've been teaching group fitness.
Wow.
And I love it. I tell everybody that I believe everyone needs a tribe, especially women. I think women really need a tribe. They need a group of people who are there for them
Yeah.
in their hard times and also in their happy times. And for me, I have found that through group fitness, that's where I have found my tribe. It's where I found the people that I'm able to connect with. And through those connections, as you let down those walls of vulnerability, as you're exercising in a group fitness classroom, you connect with other women and you become really close friends. And those are my people. Those are the people that I tell everything to, that we go to lunch with, and that we just support and uplift each other. And it's been a wonderful gift in my life.
It's so amazing to hear. And I think we talked about this on our call too, but I do so much research myself on longevity and health span. And one of the top, I think there's 7 points that are critical for us aging well and staying healthy and staying vibrant and mindful. And exercise is one, of course, eating well is another, and finding a community of supportive people that you connect with, like having that connection in
Yes.
community is another one. And I think that we saw so many cracks in that during COVID, but it's so incredible to hear you say, and you find it in any way, but you've really created that as a fitness instructor, a place for people to be able to come. And it's interesting how it's fed you as you've gone through this journey, because it was your 3rd son. So you hadn't even had Jack when you initially
Right.
started. Yeah. So
Right. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But what I didn't realize at the time was how much I was really going to need that fitness aspect in my life, and how much I would rely on it for my emotional health, my mental health, my physical health after going something really hard, through something really hard.
yeah, absolutely. So let's chat a little bit about the originally, just having Jack. So you've got your 3 kids, and then you have your 4th little gem, and the unexpectedness. I think this is such an important thing for especially parents who have a child. And I hate to even use the word special needs because it limits them and they're so extraordinary. But it's a child that has extra health care that is required. And how did that turn your life upside down initially?
So my story is a little bit different, I think, than a lot of people's stories in the way that we had we'd kind of already started a new path in life. My husband had decided to go back to school and he had just graduated and he had started a new job. And his job, so we live in Utah, we live in the Salt Lake City area, and his job that he had accepted would be in Salt Lake. We were living in southern Utah at the time, which is about 4.5 hours south of Salt Lake City. And this job required him to do 8 weeks of training. And I was pregnant. I knew I was going to be having this baby. And we had planned with the pediatrician or not the pediatrician, sorry, the obstetrician, OBGYN, to induce labor. And so that my husband would be there because the company he was working for, they said, we'll fly you home every 2 weeks. And with me being pregnant, we thought, okay, that's perfect. We will plan this induction. I'm a planner. I love to plan things. And so when things kind of don't go according to plan, it always throws me off a little bit. And so I thought, this is great. We have a plan. We've got this all figured out. And so he left for Chicago 2 weeks before my induction day. And my sister's husband at the time, it was tradition for him to run the St. George Marathon, which is in southern Utah where we were. And he hadn't trained for this marathon at all. And my sister, I remember her saying to me, well, I don't know if we're going to come down anymore because Joe hasn't really trained for the marathon. And I said, well, will you just please come just in case I happen to go into labor? Then you'll be here. And so she was like, okay. And we both kind of thought, but there's no way I was going to actually go into labor and have this baby, So I sent my husband off the following weekend. My sister and her family came for the St. George Marathon. And even though my brother-in-law hadn't trained, he ran this marathon. And anyway, long story short, I ended up going into labor while my sister was there. And so it was just this tender mercy to have her there. She was really excited. She drove me to the hospital and she was really excited to be the one on the other end. She had experienced giving birth, but she'd never experienced watching someone else give birth. And she was just really excited to be my cheerleader. And so when the baby was born, she got to cut the umbilical cord and all these things. And there was lots of hushed tones around us. Everybody was talking very quietly and I couldn't really tell what they were saying. And it just felt like there was kind of this awkwardness in the room. And I heard the doctor say to the nurse, is there a heart murmur? And I thought, heart murmur? And then the nurse said no. And I kind of thought, okay, well, good. There's no heart murmur. And then, they kind of continued on with things and there was still just a lot of awkwardness in the room. So it was very obvious that something was going on, but it's not their job to give the diagnosis or to tell you what they suspect. They wait for the pediatrician to come in to do that. And so my sister was there and I was holding the baby and the pediatrician comes in. It's really late at night. And I thought, wow, this pediatrician's really on top of things. He's coming in at it was close to midnight. I'd never had a pediatrician come in that late, in the evening. And he kind of just leaned up against the countertop and he just looked at me, folded his arms and said, we think your baby has Down syndrome. And he just said it just like that. Wow. And I was still in shock. You know how it is after you have a baby, you're just absolutely exhausted. You're mentally exhausted. You're physically exhausted. And my sister was standing right next to me and I'm holding this baby and I couldn't get a single word to come out of my mouth. And I just looked at him and I wanted him to leave because I felt like I was going to start crying. And I looked up at my sister and she just said to me, it doesn't matter. Just like that. It doesn't matter. And I felt this feeling of relief just kind of come over my body by hearing her say that because I didn't know what to do. And she just said, it doesn't matter. And so I thought, okay. And I just clung to those words. It doesn't matter. And over the next few days, we kind of would look at him. We had to wait for the official blood test to come back, and we would look at him and think, yeah, he looks like he has Down syndrome. No, he doesn't look like he has Down syndrome, because all babies with their cute scrunched up faces look kind of funny when they're first born anyway.
Yeah, so
And
cute.
so we kind of went back and forth, back and forth. And when we got that, before we got the official news, my husband had flown back in from Chicago. And so he was there, and we got the news saying that he had Down syndrome. And that was really shocking. Even though we kind of knew that it was coming, it was shocking. And there was just this process of grief that you experience because you grieve for the baby that you thought you were going to have. And, I didn't know anybody growing up who had Down syndrome. And so for me, because I didn't have that experience of getting to know anyone who had Down syndrome, I just had all of these thoughts coming into my mind of worst case scenarios of what it would be like to have a child with Down syndrome. And in fact, my husband and I were talking about this recently, and he said, where did your mind go? What were you so worried about? What were you thinking about when they told you that he had Down syndrome? Like, what were you so afraid of? And I said, well, I didn't know anybody with Down syndrome. And I thought, here I am. I've just had this baby that, I've had friends who in their late 30s or early 40s specifically tested to see if their baby had Down syndrome and how worried they were that their baby would have Down syndrome. So in my mind, I thought, I've just given birth to a baby that no one else wanted.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what to do with those feelings. And then we were rushed up to Salt Lake to Primary Children's Hospital a couple of weeks later because he needed surgery to repair his intestines. They weren't attached to his stomach. And so it was quite a roller coaster ride those first few months because my husband was in Chicago and I was in Salt Lake at the hospital. And then my older kids were in Southern Utah with my in-laws, and we were all separated. And it was a very, very traumatic time in our lives. And then once we got home from the hospital and everybody was back together, I kind of went to a dark place because I hadn't allowed myself to think about the diagnosis. I just had been in a place of where let's just get this baby well, let's get him home. And then once he was home, everything just kind of settled in, and I found myself in a really dark place. And I think I had postpartum depression.
Yeah.
I'd never had it with any of my other babies. And now looking back, I realized that that's what I had, but I was really depressed for a while. And it was what got me out of it was teaching group fitness and was the community of my group fitness classes.
Wow. Oh my, you literally, I just had waves of chills. Anybody who's ever had a child who's given birth to a child, I mean, as you said, that in itself is a very emotional experience, regardless of how well or how challenging it goes. And then for you to have to hear the whispers and know, and that just, you're in such a vulnerable state as it is, and your body is just flooded with all these hormones and everything's happening at once. And just that spinning feeling. And there is, we talked about this on our earlier conversation too, but even for me, with my daughter being born with cystic fibrosis, I think in the beginning, there is this element of denial because you're in survival mode and you actually don't have you don't have the bandwidth to grieve. And you had 3 kids. For me, it was my first, but you had these other 3 children that you had to look after. And then for you had, some of the top 5 most stressful experience in a new place. Your husband's off starting a new job. The whole family's disbanded for obvious reasons. And then this happens and you've got this very traumatic experience to have to go through. It's amazing that I just think the human spirit and the will to be able to overcome those things. And it's so incredible to hear that at least you had a community that you could lean on. And what was that like for you? Like, what did that grieving experience, we're going to get to the good stuff, but how did that unfold? And do you remember the turning point? Like, yes, it was your fitness, but what was the turning point that was like, okay, I feel like I can actually breathe again?
So, when I left the hospital, I had lived at the hospital for 2 months and I didn't leave very often because the only thing that I could do was hold my baby. And I kept telling people, I just feel like he needs someone to hold him and love him. And I don't want to leave him here.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so when I finally left the hospital, I think I had a lot of PTSD just from leaving the hospital because I was used to having all of these nurses and doctors and people checking in on him all of the time. And I was kind of in this safe bubble, because I wasn't having to do anything alone and independently. And so once I got home, I was really terrified of, well, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? And what am I going to do? And how am I going to get this done? And how am I going to figure out this? And, trying to manage all that with all my kids. And I think that's kind of what led to that depression.
Yeah.
Uh, and then all of just those dark thoughts. Like I said, I didn't know anybody who had Down syndrome. And so my mind just kept whirling around these thoughts of worst case scenarios, like what if he never talks? What if he never walks? What if he never uses the bathroom? What if he, all of these things, just worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
And I just let myself sink deeper and deeper and deeper down into that hole. And one day, my sister-in-law, she's actually a life coach. And out of the blue, she called me on the phone. I remember driving in the car. She calls me on the phone and she's like, I don't know why, but I have had this feeling that I need to call you, this nagging feeling that I need to call you. What's going on?
Wow.
And I hadn't allowed myself to talk about any of my deepest fears or thoughts or feelings because I felt like that made me a really bad person.
Yeah.
I almost felt like it was bad that I felt like I needed to grieve because I was like, here I am. I have this baby and he's beautiful and I love him, but why am I so sad? I
Yeah.
felt a lot of guilt and shame for feeling that way. And so I didn't talk about it with anybody. It just kind of just wrestled inside me. And so she called me and she and I talked on the phone for probably a couple of hours and I unloaded all of my deepest, darkest thoughts and feelings that I hadn't told anybody.
Oh,
And she gave me some really powerful affirmations to tell myself.
wow.
And once I started implementing those and just the process of talking it out, I think letting it go and putting it out there, it was able to release from my body. But then I started practicing daily affirmations and I still do this. I
Yeah.
still do daily affirmations. I had sticky notes that I put on my mirror. And I remember looking at those and just saying them out loud every single day, these positive thoughts and allowing these positive feelings and energetic thoughts to come into my life. And then, so that was the first part of the turning point for me. And then
Wow.
the second part is that I remember just praying for a glimpse.
Yeah.
I just was like, God, I just want a glimpse. If you can give me a glimpse of what his life will look like in the future, then I'll be okay. Just give me a glimpse. And
Wow.
one day, my husband and I don't even know how we stumbled across it, but we found this video of this young man with Down syndrome who lives in California. And for his project for his senior year, he did a video of his life, just kind of showing the daily routine of his life. So we're watching this video and he could ride a bike and he rode it independently to the YMCA every single day. And while at the YMCA, he would swim laps and then he would come home and he would make himself a smoothie. And he had this whole system of like organizing his clothes so that and I'm sure his parents helped him do this, but he had these lockers where he'd put his clothes in. He had a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, one for every day of the week. And he'd get his clean clothes out. Anyway, we sat there in complete like admiration of this young man, just watching him and being totally wowed. And we thought, okay, if Jack can be anything like this young man, then we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be fine. There's nothing that we need to be afraid of. And that was the glimpse that I needed to see so that I could be okay. And now today, we look at Jack and we look at how far he's come. And I look back at those moments and it's like, we have to go through the hard.
Yeah.
No, it's not fun. We all have to do it, right? We've all experienced something hard in our lives, or we know someone who's experienced something hard. And as rough as that is, we can look back at those moments, and I can actually look back at that and say, I'm so grateful that I was able to experience that, because now I have such a greater appreciation for where I'm at today
Yeah.
and where Jack is today and what we're experiencing today. And through like all this social media stuff, we get to be that glimpse for other people who are those first early stages of finding out that their child has Down syndrome, and they can watch our videos of Jack.
Yeah.
And it gives them hope, and it gives them, something to look forward to that they maybe wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so powerful. Hope is such a powerful 4-letter word. Like, it is HOPE. Yes, it is 4-letter word. It is such a powerful 4-letter word, because it literally allows you to, like, I love the terminology that you used. Just give me a glimpse. That's, I think, when anybody's in a low point, or anybody is experiencing this initial onset, particularly at the, when you're parenting, or when you've just delivered a baby that is diagnosed with something that feels overwhelming. I was listening to something the other day that said anxiety is this fear of things happening that haven't yet happened. And that's
Right.
That's natural. Like, you don't know what's to come, right? It's all so new to you. And so it's very natural that your brain would go to this saying, like, what if he can't do all these things? And I think just you're sharing your story for anybody that is going through anything like that. And I'm not going to get into my story, but it was very similar for me. It was the remedy is the hope. Literally, that's the remedy, is like, if
Right.
that child, that boy that you saw the video of, that glimpse, I love that term, that gave you the hope to say, yes, if he can do it, Jack can do it. And then it's your parenting and the way your family obviously came together to believe that for this young boy. I really do believe that so much of the way our kids turn out, regardless of whether they're born with Down syndrome or they're not, or whatever it is literally
Right.
what you decide it's going to be, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Our mind is a very powerful tool. And
Yes.
I've learned that over the years, that if I can retrain my mind,
Yeah.
then anything is possible.
Anything is possible. And Jack is just, I mean, I watched your page long before I ever really connected with you, and just, it always makes me smile. That Jack is just such a bright light. And so moving into that, and I love the affirmations. I do the same thing. Affirmations. I think that's another super powerful piece of this, is just putting your mind and your thoughts on what you actually want the outcome to be, not what
Exactly.
you're terrified of it being, that, because it is, either of them is going to be within our realm of control, right? That, as best we can. But I love that you've taken this now and you've made this something that you want to pay it forward. And that one story that you and your husband saw of that young boy, that gave you that hope. But look at the lives, like, you're just cracked over 100,000 followers on Instagram and growing. And
It's insane.
it is, but it isn't, right? Like, I think it's just such a testimony to, going back to what we started saying, community, to hope,
Mhm.
to showing the bright side of something that, you could have easily stayed in that very dark place, and
Right.
everybody would have suffered. You would have suffered, Jack, your 3 kids, your husband, like, everybody would have suffered, but you chose to rise above it. And that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when I went to university, like, the highest at the top of that triangle, it's like the basic needs, like, shelter and food and all those basic things. And at the very top is this notion of self-actualization and giving back. And that's what
Right.
you're doing. And that's where you turn your struggles. And I'm sure that every day isn't easy peasy and there is never any
Right.
challenges, but you've taken something that can be such a challenge and you've just provided so much beauty and light and joy in the world. How does that feel? Because I also know that this isn't always, because there's people online that are like, yes, I love it, Kimberly, this is amazing. And then it's like, oh, she's just doing this for whatever. But how does it feel for you to know that you are at the end of the day, just share a little bit about why you decided to take Jack's story online.
So the interesting thing is that for a long time, my husband and friends would say, you need to share more of Jack. He would be really popular. You need to share more of him. And
So cute.
um, I just think that timing is everything,
Yeah.
right? And now is the time, or like when it really started taking off about a year ago, that was the time for it to happen. My two older kids, my daughter got married and my son left for college. And so we were just left with Jack and Blake at home. And I started seeing how excited Jack was just anytime his brother and sister would come home. And so I started filming it because for myself, I thought, if anything, I just want to remember these moments for myself. And I posted this first video. I think it was right before Thanksgiving. Luke came home and I said, Jack, Luke's here, because I would watch on Find My Friends. And I said, Luke is here. And Jack stops and he goes, what? And it was actually really cold outside. And the funny thing is about that first video is you can hear him yell at us, shut up, because we're like, Jack, you should put a coat on. It's cold outside. And he goes, shut up. Because he was so excited to get outside. He did not want us to stop him from going outside. So he was not going to put a coat on. So, and I don't know if people can tell that's what he actually yells at us, but he's like, shut up in the video. But he gets outside and he just puts his hands up to his face and he's like, oh my gosh, Lukey, so excited. He calls him Lukey. And I think the anticipation of waiting, and watching him as he waited, and then Luke comes up, and just this bond between the two brothers. So that's kind of what started. And then that video, I remember it just kept going. Like it just kept getting viewed. Jeez. People would comment and say, this is so heartwarming. This video is full of so much light and love. And, sometimes I forget that there's a lot of people out there in the world who, like, they really struggle and they don't get to experience a lot of happiness in their life. I mean, their circumstances at home or wherever they are in their life isn't positive. And I think this attracts a lot of people to that aspect because they just want to feel that joy. They want to feel happiness. They want to feel good. And I think that they feel like they're a part of our family, and I want them to feel like they're a part of their family and experience that with us. And so when that video started to take off, I thought, you know what, let's just go along for the ride. And I just kept creating videos and videotaping Jack because he's hilarious and his reactions are priceless. Yeah. And people just love it. They just can't get enough of it.
He's so refreshing and unfiltered and just a joy bug. Like I know, and again, I recognize that it probably isn't always easy peasy, but he is a joy bug. And yeah, I think everybody, I remember watching that video and feeling like, I think I was like the look on my face, the feeling on my face was just like utter joy. Like I was there with you guys watching this all happen. And I think what a good sport Luke is, because I know your other two kids aren't so keen on, which is fair. Like that's
Taylor, she'll go along. She doesn't mind it. She likes being in some of the videos, but our 17-year-old is like, he's like every typical 17-year-old. He's like, do not bother me with your social media. I could care less about your videos, And the funny thing is that Jack, they've grown up with this. And so they're used to it. And to them, it's like, it's just Jack. That's just who he is, Exactly. And the funny thing is though, is that when I first was kind of putting together that first video, and when I added the music and I watched it back, I got emotional watching it back. Yes. And I kind of thought, oh, I'm his mom. Like, of course I'm going to get emotional watching this. I'm his mom, And so the interesting thing for me has been that not only does that it give me that reaction, but other people on the other side of the screen, they also have that same reaction. And
Yes.
it brings a lot of other people to tears
Yes.
and, you know, brings up a different emotions in them as they watch it, which is interesting because I thought, oh, it's just me. I'm his mom.
But I love the choice to share the positive side again, because I think there is a choice on social and you can go either way, but to be able to make that decision that our page and our family page is going to be about hope and about joy and love and connection and family. It's so refreshing, Kimberly.
Oh, thank you.
It's so refreshing, and I just applaud it. I think it's so beautiful. And I know, from our family's perspective, the family dynamic is a really important thing, because when you do have a single child, and I know some people have more than one child, and I know that the challenges must be extraordinary, but when you have a child that requires extra care, like Jack does, the whole family is in it. Like, there's not one person that isn't a part of that, because the dynamic of, you're like a team, right? Like the whole family
Right.
is a team. Um, and you can answer this, but it seems like the siblings really play a critical role in helping Jack have this very normal life.
They do. They
Yeah.
fight with him just
Yeah,
like
of
the
course.
siblings would fight, or they get annoyed with him or tell him to stay out of their room. And
Yes.
Jack knows how to get under like on their nerves. He really plays the role of little brother very well. And I mean, we were just at the pumpkin patch on Saturday, and Jack likes to tease Blake, and he knows all the ways to
Hit the
tease him
button.
and make him upset. But you know what? He should be able to do that because that's what siblings do, right? Like, and I think that's also part of strengthening those sibling relationships is part of that, like,
Yeah.
tension sometimes and learning how to work out your differences with each other.
Yeah.
Um, I do think because my kids have grown up with Jack, I think there's a different level of empathy
Yes.
and understanding to individuals who have special needs that not everyone gets to experience. There are aspects of it, like, you've said, there are aspects of it that are really hard. And my kids have had to deal with some of that really hard. But at the same time, I think because of that, it's kind of like going through that refiner's fire. I think there's been moments for all of us where we've had experiences where we're like, man, this is really challenging. But then we come out on the other end, and I think it's strengthened us as a family to go through it together.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've worried about, have I given too much attention to Jack and not enough to the other kids? I think that's my greatest challenge or my biggest fear, because Jack does require so much extra attention that I've worried, that someday in the future, my kids are going to look back and be like, gosh, mom didn't care about us. She only cared about Jack, or she didn't do this for us because she was busy doing this with Jack. But so far, it seems like my kids aren't upset with me. I feel like they are very understanding and sympathetic. And if anything, I feel like they're really good at jumping in when they see that there needs to be some extra help, or if they can see that maybe I'm getting flustered or my husband's getting flustered, they jump in and they take over for a minute to kind of help, settle things down, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's a dynamic that, again, I think comes with the territory. And it's almost, I remember early on when Maddie was quite young, that we have twins, and so we had Maddie and then the twins, and it was full on. And Maddie was, I don't know, maybe she was 5, and the twins were like 3 or 2, 5 and 2, I guess. And hearing other people whose children, and listen, you don't know what you don't know. Like, we know what we know because we're in it, but I don't even know what you know, and you don't even know what I like. You know what I mean? Like, also
Yes.
different. But I just remember having less tolerance for hearing people complain about their kids when they were fully healthy, and they were, even if they were, misbehaving, it was like, okay, that discipline part, that's okay. You can discipline that child. That's okay. And the bond that your family develops. But I remember saying to my husband at one point, like, this has happened in our family, and we're going to make the most of it, and we're going to give her the best life, give our whole family the best lives, but we will not complain about one of our children, not any of them, because I think to have children, and I even still get emotional. Like, I'm emotional talking about it sometimes. Like, nobody says I'm going to have that child that has Down syndrome. It's going to be
Right.
all these extra needs that they have, and as they mature and develop, there's all these other things that when they're young they don't even, they're sort of oblivious to, and then all of a sudden as their awareness grows, there's other challenges as a parent that you have to go through with your children. So I think you just have to make the most of it. But I think it gives you this sense of empathy and appreciation and gratitude for
Mhm.
just how incredible it is to just give life, period. And then to have them healthy and well is just, it's incredible. But they are there to remind us of the beauty and the joy and the value of life, even with all the little,
For sure.
yeah, yeah.
And something that's really interesting is I think, and I don't know, maybe you experienced this a little bit with your daughter, but when you go through something hard like that, when you have a newborn baby, or, I'm sure there's lots of people who, I mean, like I said, everyone goes through something hard, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And, but I remember coming home from the hospital, and like I said, I was kind of in that dark place, and I became really cynical because, I would hear somebody, like you said, like complain about something that their child wasn't doing, or something that they thought was hard. And I remember thinking in my mind, oh, you think that is hard? And I started catching myself,
Yeah,
uh, because I realized that I was having those thoughts. And I thought, I don't want to be that person,
yeah,
because yes, what they're going through is hard, and what I'm going through is hard. And they can both be hard things, but like, because they haven't been through what I'm through, that is hard for them.
for
And
sure.
I need to empathize with that,
Yes.
and not hold any, any cynicism or whatever against them, because I feel like maybe what I've gone through is harder. And I had to like really work on that,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to approach people with that type of mindset and look at them and feel like, oh, roll my eyes and be like, whatever, you think that that's hard. Because when somebody hasn't been through what you've been through, and there's people that have been through things that are harder than what
Oh,
I've been through,
absolutely.
they could easily look at my circumstances and say, oh, she thinks that that's hard. Like, they would take my hard. How often do we look at
Yes.
someone else's hard and say, okay, I'll take my hard over your hard, like,
Absolutely.
this is easy. I don't want to touch that, So
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think that's a place where we can all, look at ourselves, look at life, and we can grow from our circumstances, and not allow those circumstances for us to become, bitter or cynical or
Yeah.
angry, and like hold in all of those feelings. Rather, let all of that go and offer support to
Yeah.
other people when they're going through something that is difficult, and love. And I think that that's what like our page has turned into, is it's become a place of support. It's become a place of hope. It's become a place of love. And, we talked about this. Yes, I do get those negative comments. I do get those negative direct messages. And
Trolls.
times where I see those, and it puts me in kind of a like, oh, like, man, that kind of hurt,
Yeah.
you know, because, and then I have to remind myself, but they don't know me personally. They don't know my family personally. They don't know what my actual intentions are, which are good. And I have to just try and like ignore all of that. You will see some people, and I mean, this is fine if other people want to do this. I've just chosen that this isn't what I want to focus on, but you'll see some people that will, post maybe the negative comment that they got, and then they'll kind of create a conversation around it. And maybe they do that for validation that what they're doing is the right thing. And And I've just decided I'm not going to give any weight to any of that negativity, because like 98% of the feedback that we get is positive. And so I just want to keep it light and
Yeah.
fun.
And I love that choice and that decision, because it's so true. Whatever somebody's going to post, they're going to post. It really is. And oftentimes it has more to do with whatever struggles they're experiencing. It's really a projection from them onto you, but has nothing to do with you. So I think it's smart to step into that nasty arena and sort of go to battle. And it's interesting too, when people have a beautiful presence online like you do, that oftentimes what happens, you don't even have to say anything, because your following sort of takes care of some of that. Like, oh,
that's true. That's true.
What a battle for you without you even having to say anything. And I also wanted to just step back really quickly and just say that I love what you said, because that is so true. It's like when you're in your hard. And I remember we have a sick kids hospital here that we've gone to every 3 months for Maddie's entire life until she graduated to the adult clinic, the adult hospital. And like, it didn't take long. Like, it was well under a year where you're just, she's like, oh my gosh, poor me. Like, I have this child that has this. And then every 3 months I would go to sick kids and I would see all these other hards. And I would say, like, thank God that this is, and I would literally send like these private prayers, like silent messages and prayers to all these moms and parents and kids that it's hard. And as you said, like, everybody's heart is different. It is, our lives are so individual. Our traumas, how we respond to things are so individual. But again, just circling back to what we started with, I really love your choice to make this a bright, positive page. And I was going to ask you, for going forward, like, do you advocate on behalf of Down syndrome? Have you been invited to speak about, at groups for parents? Like, how has that evolved for you too?
I have. It's interesting. Like, a lot of doors have opened in the last few months. And so I actually spoke at an event a couple of months ago where I was able to share my story. And the purpose of that event was to bring together women, and they called it Women of Children with Special Needs. And so special needs can be anything. Like, it could be children that are struggling with depression or anxiety or suicide, or who actually have autism or Down syndrome or whatever. And so that was a really neat conference to be a part of, and to be able to come together with all of these women from all different walks of life who have experienced different trials with their children, and they were able to come together and share those stories and uplift one another. That was really neat to be able to do. I've been invited to another conference that will be in April that I will be speaking at. So yeah, it's been neat to be able to advocate this way and share these things. And then also, I get messages all the time from new mothers who either just recently received a Down syndrome diagnosis in utero or had a birth diagnosis, and either someone has shared my page with them or they found it themselves. And they just write to me and they say, I just found your page and I just had a baby with Down syndrome, and there's that word hope again. Your page has given me so much hope for his or her future.
Yeah. That, honestly, at the end of the day, that is one of the most powerful things you can give people. It's just such a noble way to take some challenge that you're facing and pay it forward. Like, it actually makes me emotional just thinking about what you've created and how you've set that up. And just, I felt that way, as I said, even coming onto your page and watching things. And again, our lives are so different, and yet there's that common ground that I get you as a mom, and I get a little taste of what the challenges are. There's invisible challenges in the background that I just have so much respect for what you've done and how you've handled it. I just think you're amazing. I think you're amazing.
You're so nice. I think that people, when I received the Down syndrome diagnosis, I was really scared. Sure. I was terrified for the future. And I think what we're showing on our page is that it's not scary.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
yes, he might have some challenges, he didn't walk as early as our other kids did. He didn't learn to talk as soon. He has some challenges with at school, like, he's a little bit behind. But overall, all of those things don't really matter.
Yeah.
When you look at the grand scheme of things, all of those things don't matter. It's the relationship that we have with him and the relationship that my kids have with him and how he's able to. We always kind of said that Jack was born without the misery gene and that the rest of us have the misery gene. And we
Oh,
look at him today and he was born without the misery gene. And how lucky are we that we get to be, you know, like front and center and watch this unfold as he lives his life. And I hope that when people come to our page, that they will look at that and realize that their child has also been born without the misery gene, and that there's so many happy times to look forward to, and that it's not scary. My husband said at the beginning, when I was kind of like, why us? Like, I can think of so many other people who would be better at, raising a child with special needs. Because I'm not one of those people that necessarily likes to do my research you know, and all of this type of stuff. And so I thought someone else would do a much better job at this, because they'll be willing to do all of the research and study it out and figure out how, to do this or what the best therapist is for this and all that type of stuff. And I remember my husband just sitting back and like kind of calming me down and being like, Kim, like we're going to be okay, because if anybody's going to love him, that's us. We're
yeah.
really good. We're really good at loving people, and we're going to be able to love him. And that's one of the most important things that he needs in his life. And when he said that, I was kind of like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
We are really good at loving people, and we're going to love him, and it's going to be okay.
Wow, so powerful. And that's all anybody needs, is just love and that feeling of acceptance for who you are, and that
Yep,
sense.
exactly.
What would you say it has been the biggest growth that you've experienced through being a mom to Jack?
I think for me, as I've learned to really let go of those things in life that aren't really that important,
Yeah.
I'm able to kind of categorize the importance of things in my life. And I think I'm a lot more laid back than I was before he was born, because I think I would kind of like I said, I kind of always like to have a plan and I love to have a schedule. And Jack has turned all of that upside down. So I have learned to a lot more to go with the flow and to just kind of take what life gives me without feeling like I need to have my life completely planned out all the time. And rather I take things day by day. And I think also I'm more empathetic and encouraging to anyone who's around me. And I think that's why in my fitness classes, people are really drawn to my classes, because I've created this environment where people feel accepted and they feel loved no matter what their trial is that they're going through. I have a lot of women who have come to me and have said, you have no idea, I was going through a divorce, or my mom passed away from cancer, or I was experiencing infertility, and your class is the one thing that got me through it. And I think it's because I've created this community of women who just really rally around one another and uplift one another. And because of that, they feel accepted and they feel loved.
Yeah.
I think that that's really important to be able to do that and to bring people into your life, bring them into your inner circle, and make them just feel needed and
Yeah.
important.
I love that, how, it's the things that are the toughest that knock you to your knees, that actually, when you get through it, and there's no way through it than just through it. Like, you can't go around,
Exactly.
turn around, you got to go right down the center of the barrel. And
Exactly.
that transformation on the other side is just so powerful. So I think that message for young moms, new moms that have any kind of diagnosis of their child that sort of shakes their world, you are providing such a beautiful hope, like just in so many ways for the growth that the individual will experience, what's possible for your child. You've just shared so many great tips about what people can do with the affirmations and, developing a community. You don't have to be a personal, coach and fitness instructor to do that. You can develop it in any way. You can start one yourself. But yeah, I just think you're just such an incredible person. And I chose you to interview because I get to interview all these amazing women that I see, that I know, and I do believe you are so incredibly amazing. What women in your life are amazing to you?
My mom, she is incredible. She is my rock. She's the one that I can always go to and talk about all of these things with. And she's always been a really positive example of just positivity and allowing people to come in, and she just treats them like every one of my friends feels like they walk away like they are her daughter. She's
Wow.
really good at loving people. And then I just have so many good examples in my life. I feel like from all different walks of life, women that I've met at the gym, women that I've met at church, women like you that I've met through social media. I feel like I'm really blessed. I don't know if I could just name one person. And then as I watch my daughter, it's really amazing. And you probably feel this way too, but it's amazing to watch them grow up to be adults
Yes.
and how they perform as an adult. And I watch my daughter and I look at her and I'm like, wow, I made that. That's amazing. She's incredible. How did I get so lucky to have such an amazing daughter? And so for me, I feel like she's one of those people that I really look up to as well. And I want to be like her, when I grow up.
Oh, I always say about my 3 daughters that I birthed my besties.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
friends, and they're like so cool. I would have chosen them just like you're describing
Right.
your
Right.
daughter. I would have chosen them if they weren't family already. Well,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Well, we're going to share at the end of this all the places that people can connect with you if they aren't yet, on Instagram and anywhere else that they can connect with you. And if you want to share your fitness classes, wherever they can connect. But it's been such a pleasure. I really just felt, as I said, such drawn to you and such a connection from the minute I started following your page. So I appreciate everything that you do, and I appreciate your time on this call and sharing all of this amazing wisdom. Oh, I feel like we've frozen. Hold on one sec here. I'll wait till you come back.
Are you still there?
Yes,
Okay.
froze for just a second. I was just saying thank you so much for taking the time to pop on and to share on this interview. And we're going to share where everybody can find you and reach you and connect with you. And I just feel so grateful and so blessed that you're in my sphere, in my orbit now. It's really awesome.
Well, I feel really grateful that you invited me to do this. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you everybody for watching, and comment below if you have any questions for Kimberly or myself. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. Big hugs.